Good afternoon, everyone. On behalf of Americans for Prosperity, I'm Darrell Tootle. I have the pleasure of introducing Blaise Ingoglia, our Florida CFO, who understands that spreadsheets aren't the only thing important about financial. Responsibility is important, transparency is important, accountability. We'd like to thank CFO Mr. Ingoglia for his work on making America and Florida a smarter and more efficient place. With that, welcome, Blaise Ingoglia.
Appreciate you. Good morning or afternoon, everyone. How are you? My name is Blaise Ingoglia. I'm the Chief Financial Officer, and today the Local Government Fiscal Accountability Tour continues. Over the last few months, we have exposed more than $1.5 billion, and that is billion with a B, in excessive and wasteful spending across just 9 local governments. $190 million in Orange County, $199 million in the city of Jacksonville, $278 million in Hillsborough County, $84 million in Alachua County, $189 million in Broward County, $48 million in Seminole County, $112 million in Manatee County, $94 million in the city of Miami, and a whopping $302 million in Miami-Dade County. Now, those eye-popping amounts are not a cumulative amount. That is not over 5 years. That is the wasteful, excessive spending in 1 year alone, last year. I will say it again. That $1.5 billion with a B is the amount of wasteful, excessive spending in just fiscal year 2024 to 2025. That $1.5 billion does not belong in the hands of government bureaucrats. That $1.5 billion belongs in the pockets of the taxpayers. Now, my message has been crystal clear from the beginning. Regardless of what the liberal media says, regardless of what the big government apologists say, it does not matter if you are a red county or a blue county. It doesn't matter if you are a red city or a blue city. We are going to treat everyone, each local government, the same, because honestly, I don't care if you are a Democrat or a Republican or an NPA. If you are a taxpayer, I'm going to be looking out for you and your tax dollars regardless of party affiliation. So even if the wasteful spending apologists won't acknowledge it, we are conducting a wasteful spending exercise, not a partisan exercise. I've said it before and I will say it again. Taxpayers deserve to know that your CFO that I am calling balls and strikes. Taxpayers deserve to know that this is a credible exercise, not a partisan exercise. I have been on the record saying that if a red county or city wastefully and excessively spends your hard-earned tax dollars, we're going to call them out. See Exhibit A, Manatee County, that so far has excessively and wastefully spent $112 million of your hard-earned tax money this year. I've been on the record saying that if a blue county or a blue city, or city did a good job restraining spending and keeping government somewhat in check, we're going to acknowledge them. Our methodology is very simple. Government should never, ever grow faster than inflation and population. So what we did is we started off with a base budget year. That base budget year, the 2019-2020 budget year. And then what we did was indexed it forward, increasing it every year for inflation and population to find out what the local government's budget should reasonably be today. And then compare it to their actual budget. And then everything over that we are deeming excessive and wasteful spending. Local government apologists have been out in force, trying to persuade you, the taxpayer, using your tax dollars against you, that they are not spending recklessly. They absolutely are. They're trying to persuade you that our formula does not work. It does. Let's be clear. It's not that they don't like the formula. They just don't like the results. But you know what they're going to like less than the results? The results that we are going to unveil today here in the city of Orlando. The same formula and calculation that has yielded Orange County, that has yielded disastrous results, I might add, for Orange County, disastrous results for the city of Jacksonville, and disastrous results for Miami-Dade, has yielded that the city of Orlando actually is in much better shape when it comes to spending than those other big, bloated, wasteful budgets. Let me repeat that again. Anyone who wants to try to impugn what we're doing, we're proving today that this isn't a partisan exercise. So the media and everyone can get as hyperbolic as they want. They can complain, but the very same calculations yielded that the city of Orlando is doing much better than those other governments. Now let me be clear. This does not mean that they haven't wasted your hard-earned tax dollars here in the city of Orlando, because they absolutely have. And I think some of that has been well documented. And let me also be clear that just because a local government spends closer to an indexed formula of inflation and population budget increased for those amounts doesn't mean that they don't have room to cut, because they absolutely 100% do. So what is the city of Orlando's wasteful and excessive spending number? $22,332,519. Now that's still a big number. That's a lot of waste. That's a lot of excess. But this number relative to what we are seeing in Broward County, in Miami-Dade, in the city of Jacksonville, and here in Orange County is a lot better than those. Now, this is still wasteful and excessive spending. This is still money that could be very easily, according to our calculations, be cut out of the budget and offer property tax relief. But this is the lowest amount that we have seen so far after reviewing 10 local governments on both a percentage basis and a raw dollar amount. This, though, is still wasteful and excessive spending, but nowhere near, say, what Orange County is spending. Our calculations show that the city of Orlando's budget, according to our calculations, should have grown a maximum. You might get that. It might be the media asking, why am I doing this? A maximum of 32.68%. Orlando's actual budget grew by only 37%. Now, some of the ones that we have reviewed have been 100%. Some of them have been 60, some of them have been 70. But I think we've shown here that these numbers don't lie. Our formula is what it is. If it's yielding disaster results for those and halfway decent results for the city of Orlando, well, guess what? I think our calculations are pretty spot on. Now, this is a relatively sane amount of spending in an insane spending environment compared to other local governments. But when we are doing these high-level calculations, they have been the best metro area that we have seen so far. The general fund budget has increased by $191 million over 5 years, okay? Still a lot of money, but 22 million of that 109 million we are deeming that shouldn't have been spent at all. In fact, I can make a very good argument that it shouldn't have gone up $191 million. But the difference between those two, City of Orlando is only off 4.32%. Much better. Still overspending, but much better than those big bloated budgets of Orange County. They're over 4.32%. What does this mean? You can cut this out of the budget easy. You can offer property tax relief. So when they say that they can't cut, they're lying. They can. They just don't want to. And now I'm going to prove to you that even if you are relatively close to inflation and population, that government is still growing way too fast. Over the last 5 years, Orlando has grown about 24,000 people. Pretty modest over the last 5 years also. But just because you have new people moving in doesn't necessarily mean you take that extra revenue and use it as an excuse to grow government. You shouldn't. Because the taxpayers are funding the government. The taxpayers should have a seat at the table. And what we have seen time and time again from local governments is that taxpayers don't have a seat at the table. Why? Partially because they're working 2 jobs. They're taking care of their children. They're making sure that the kids are getting their homework done. How many times have you gone to a local budget workshop? Probably not many. Why? Because you're busy. And you have to rely on others to start relaying the information. That's what we're doing, is relaying this information. Over the last 5 years, the city of Orlando has increased their payroll by 245 administrative positions, not including fire, not including police. So you have to ask yourself, and this is my argument, and I think the numbers back it up, is that a government doesn't need to increase by inflation and population if you have good fiscal stewards watching the taxpayer dollar. Why do you have to add 245 administrative positions for 20-something thousand people? We don't do that in the public sector. I mean, in a private sector, excuse me, but they do that in the public sector. You know, it's amazing, if the private sector has increased demand, they become more productive. They automate. They renegotiate. The problem is that government renegotiates, but they renegotiate with you guys, the taxpayers, in the form of higher taxes. And it's a one-way negotiation. They get to set the millage rate. You have to pay for it. And if you don't, after 3 or 5 years, they can actually take your house if you don't pay your property taxes. It is a one-way negotiation with government. Now, for each, if you take those numbers and you do the math, for each person that moved into the city of Orlando, their budget grew by almost $8,000. For every family of 4 that moved into the city of Orlando, their budget increased almost $29,000. So understand what I'm saying. The city of Orlando, which has excessively and wastefully spent $22 million, nowhere near what we've seen from the other governments. Nowhere near. They are holding the line relatively close to inflation and population growth, but they're still spending $29,000 for every family of 4 that comes into the county. That just goes to show you that inflation and population is the ceiling of what they should be spending on. That's giving them grace. That's us giving them grace. I don't think the taxpayers should give them grace, because I'm going to tell you right now, if you actually hold it to be true that government should not grow that quickly, then those numbers explode. Orange County's $200 million is probably closer to $240 million. So just so everyone understands, that number is a ceiling. So even though they have kept their budget increase relatively in check, we believe and we know that there is still room to cut. The city of Orlando could reduce its millage rate by 0.40 mils, even with their spending relatively in check compared to the other large bloated budgets, and they can still provide all of the necessary services to their citizens. If they say they can't, they're not being truthful with you. They're using your government tax dollars to lobby against you, the taxpayers. So what does this mean in numbers? If you have a home that is tax assessed at $300,000, you'd still wind up with a $119 property tax break. And this is just the general fund portion of the budget. This doesn't include schools, which I believe are some of the most of the worst offenders when it comes to wasteful spending. It doesn't include other ad valorem taxes. Those are just the amount of money for the general fund budget. If you have a $400,000 property tax assessed value, you're going to save about $159 a year. At $500,000 property assessed value, you're going to save about $198 a year. Now, this is not anywhere near what you can save in some of these local governments because of their big bloated budgets, including Orange County, but it's still money. It's still real money, and that money belongs in the hands of the taxpayers and Florida's families. Remember, indexing these budgets for inflation and population should be the ceiling, not the goal. And here's the sad state of affairs. Local governments have seen an increase in property values, a corresponding increase in property taxes. They've seen all of this money flow into their coffers, and they hardly ever think about giving it back to the taxpayers. They don't think about the people that they are taking the money from. They just see all this money, extra money, they take it and they spend it. Over the last few months, local governments have been refuting our numbers, saying that they can't cut their big, bloated budgets. I think that we're proving that we can. I think the taxpayers want them to. They're saying our calculations are unreasonable and won't work in the real world. The same calculations, the very same calculations, the very same methodology that we used on the city of Orlando, we used on Orange County, the city of Jacksonville, Miami-Dade County, with vastly different results. According to the same calculation, the city of Orlando and Mayor Dyer have been relatively good stewards of the taxpayer dollars. They've been somewhat restraining government growth. So my question to Mayor Demings, Mayor Deegan, and Mayor Cava, who have all claimed it is impossible to do what the city of Orlando basically did, is this. What's your excuse now? They've been on TV, they've been on the airwaves, they've been on radio. They've had their big government apologists writing the Sunday editorial saying that they can't possibly keep government in growth at the check of inflation and population. If the city of Orlando could somewhat do it, still excessively wastefully spending, what's your excuse? The bottom line is that they do not have an excuse. They are growing government. They're gouging the taxpayers. They're spending frivolously, wastefully, and excessively, and then coming back to the taxpayers for more, and more. It is time for the citizens of this great state to stand up and say, we want to be taxed no more on property taxes. This is about time that we draw the line and we say that the growth in local government is far exceeding our ability to pay. And some of these people are running for election or re-election saying that housing affordability is a big issue for them. They want to make everything in Florida more affordable, but the governments that they grow is making government less and less affordable for them year after year. They say they want to bring more affordable housing, but when we show them the path so that they can go and make housing more affordable for property owners in the state of Florida, and we tell them that you can do that by reducing your budget and cutting property taxes, they're not interested. Do they really care about you? Do they really care about your families? or they care more about building the fiefdom that they've grown over the last 5 years? I think we all know the answer to that. Government spending is rising not because of essential services. It is rising because of excessive and wasteful spending by career politicians and bureaucrats who think you are an endless ATM. I started these audits, I started these spending calculations because I wanted to show the voters just how out of control local governments have become over the last 5 years. And I will continue to do that. I will continue to be an advocate for taxpayers, not for government. As a staunch fiscal conservative, I can promise you that it does not bring me great joy to announce any excessive, wasteful spending. Heck, I would have hoped that we would have never had to go through this exercise after the mid-2000s, but here we are again, 20 years later, because government hasn't been constitutionally constrained in their spending. I think government should be constitutionally constrained. And it doesn't matter if you have an R next to your name or a D next to your name. Spending wastefully and excessively knows no party affiliation. And my office will continue to work to expose these numbers in hopes that we get some real property tax relief on the November 26th ballot. At this point, I'd like to call up our next speaker, Peter Vivaldi, who is a taxpayer here in the state of Florida. Peter, microphone is yours, sir.
Thank you. I don't want to add any more to what we have just learned. I think that for years we've been needing accountability and integrity in all our cities, in all our counties. I know recently we've been talking a lot about property tax and about the fact that we, as Floridians, and I'm a 45-year Floridian living here from New York City, and those of us who are from New York have seen what just happened over the last 48 hours to our great city. I don't want to see that happen in this city, in our city, where we are in Orange County and in the city of Orlando. Surprisingly enough, when I hear the information about what has happened in the city of Orlando and with Mayor Dyer and controlling some of those costs and still need to cut even more, that's great news. That really is. But at the same time, we know there's SNAP program that's being cut, we know all the things that are happening, and yet I'm seeing on this board that in my county, $190 million is wasted, and now they're giving out $1 million to help SNAP recipients. What's $1 million compared to $190 million in waste when we could really be helping our communities? I think it's time to come back to the reality. And as taxpayers and as voters, we need to make sure that we're stronger than ever when we go to vote and when we go to see who we're voting for, to understand that this money belongs to us, we the people, not to a commissioner, not to a mayor, but really to the people. And I want to thank you for inviting me and letting me speak, because I think it's important that we need these property tax relief, and I hope that every one of you will support whatever our leader does here, from our CFO to our governor. We need to make sure that we're backing this up 100%. Thank you very much.
Just one other point before we bring up the next speaker. Local governments, we've said this from the very beginning, they're going to come out and with excuses, and they're going to say that they can't cut anything, and the first thing they do is they dangle and they say that, you know, we're going to have to cut fire and we're going to have to cut police, right? Absolute scare tactics. I see some of you guys laughing right now. Absolutely not true. 100% not true. The first role of government is to protect its citizens, and you do that in local governments. The first thing that you fund is fire and police. So if your local government says that if you cut a couple of $1 million out of your budget and you're going to have to cut fire and police, what does that mean? They're admitting that that's the last thing that they think about is fire and police. But if that's the first thing that they should be thinking about, they should be cutting out the pet projects. They should be cutting out the high-paid consultants. They should be cutting out these payments to nonprofits where the CEOs and the directors are making $300,000, $400,000, $500,000, $600,000 a year. They should cut out middle management egregious salaries where administrators and middle management are making $300,000, $400,000, $500,000. Government can cut. They're choosing not to. and they're lobbying against you, the taxpayers who are footing the bill for the existence of government itself. Sometimes we need to remind them that it's not their money, it's our money. And next is David Santiago.
Thank you, Blaise. And you know, I'm sitting here and reflecting back when I moved here 35 years ago from New York also. And one of the things we prided ourselves of coming here, my wife and I, and raising a family because it was affordable. Many of us can relate to that. And year over year over year, and most egregiously over the past 10 years, that affordability has kind of gone out the window. And the main driver, as you said, Mr. CFO, is taxes. As a local government person myself, you can see clearly how I'm glad you pointed out that the correlation to population growth and the spending that government continues to do is just way out of whack. And that attention that you're bringing to it is important. And I also sit here, Mr. Blaise, and I call him Blaise. He's a personal friend of mine, too, so I don't want to disrespect him, Mr. CFO. But I'm proud of the leadership and the boldness that you've been taking, our governor's taking, going around our state and raising awareness. People, this is extremely important. For too often, most of our leadership has been quiet, and this has just been happening silently behind the scenes. We see the little increase on our bills, a little bit more each time on our bills. And now it's ballooned to the point that I don't know if we can call Florida affordable. So the efforts that our leadership is doing is extremely important. We must embrace it, call out the lies, and show the numbers for everyone to see how local government has just gotten out of control. The other point, Mr. Chairman, too, he was one of my chairmen, so I'm reflecting back to those days. But I'm glad that you've pointed out that this is not a partisan effort. Any government, regardless if you're red or blue, should be called out for their egregious spending. So thank you for pointing that out. I think it shows that your leadership is mainly for the millions of Floridians and making this place a better, more affordable place to do. So thank you very much. Keep up the good work, and I'm here for you, and Floridians should unite behind this effort. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate you. Thank you. Two more points. One is for the press in the back, and then one is for everyone else, so we can put all of this in context and show you why that this is such a big issue. So my questions to the press in the back is, I know you guys are going to do your job. I know you're going to go and you're going to ask your local elected officials. Well, we were at CFO Ingoglia's spending calculation, and he came out with a certain number. What do you say about that? And your local elected officials, I'm going to predict what they're going to say. Well, our budget has grown. There's unfunded mandates from the state. We have to hire fire. We have to hire police. Our costs have gone up. This whole exercise of taking a base budget from 2019-2020, which was pre-COVID, it was almost pre-COVID, it's like 3 months of COVID in there, which was the last time budgets were somewhat sane, as if government budgets are ever sane. And then moving it forward and indexing for inflation and population, we've already accounted for the extra fire. We've already accounted for the extra police. We've already accounted for the negotiations with their unions for increased costs for them, pay raises for them. We've already accounted for the increased cost of everyday goods because of inflation. So my question to the media and my ask to you guys is that when you go interview them, because I just told you what their response is going to be, well, CFO Ingoglia says he's already indexed for that. So $191 million of increased spending per year from 5 years ago to today. So if you take away $22 million on that, you're around $170 million. So that means the budget, we are saying that the budget should have gone up no more than a $170 million. That's a lot of money that they spent on increased fire, increased police, raises, increased costs. So when they ask you that question, I would really love if you asked them the follow-up question, well, CFO Ingoglia said he already indexed for that. And wait for their answer. It'll be some gobbledygook government speak that some consultant written for them. Because you know what? At the end of the day, they do not have an answer for it. They've taken your money and spent it because they think that they own your dollars. not you on your dollars. And the last thing before I take some questions for the media is this. I want everyone to understand where we were and how we got here and why property taxes are such a big issue again here 20 years later, and it is going to be one of the biggest issues in the 2026 election, is this. When the original homestead exemption went on the books, the $25,000, the average home in the state of Florida, the median price was $75,000, which meant the idea of the homestead exemption was to shield the first third of your home from property taxation, the first 33%. That was the idea. So what happened in the mid-2000s? Wall Street went crazy, homes were being sold left and right, property values kicked up, property taxes skyrocketed, local governments took all that extra money, expanded it, and then there was a property tax revolt, famously fighting between then Governor Charlie Crist and then Speaker of the House Marco Rubio over property taxes, traveling the state looking for property tax reform. So what did we get? We got what we currently have right now. Your first $25,000 of your home is exempt. Your next $25,000 is taxed. The next $25,000 over that is exempt with an exemption for the school board. Blended all together, it's in between $39,000 and $40,000. Before, it shielded about 33% of your home from property taxation. That scheme that we have right now only shields about 9% of your home from property taxation. That's why you are feeling the pinch. That's why we're having an affordability crisis here in the state of Florida as it relates to people going to buy homes. If you are someone who is in between 20 and 30 years old, 20 and 35 years old, I feel sorry for them. Because the opportunity of the American dream in purchasing a home here in the state of Florida is getting out of hand. Now, there are things that we can do with government. There are some things that we cannot do with government. Some of it is market-driven. But we can do something about property taxes. If the whole idea of a homestead exemption was to shield your property from taxation, then why are we only shielding 9% now? It is absolutely out of whack, and that's why the governor and I are calling for property tax reform. Questions from the media? Yes, ma'am. I knew you were going to bounce up first. How are you? I think taxpayers should be concerned look, anyone who has a history of wastefully and excessively spending and not minding the taxpayers, we should all be concerned about that. Because look, with the wrong leadership here in the state of Florida, this state could very easily turn into New York and California. And I'm going to tell you right now, I'm going to do everything I can to make sure that we do not New York our Florida. I'm going to bust my butt and make sure that does not happen. I don't know, but I do know this. I do not like the fact that we have some people inviting anyone to move from New York to the great state of Florida. I do not want to import our ideological opposition. So if you want to move to the great state of Florida, that's fine. Just leave your ideologically left bent at the border. If you want to come here, be part of the community, be somewhat fiscally responsible, and have more freedom and opportunity, then by all means come. But if you're going to come here in an effort to escape something that you clearly voted for, and you turned New York City into what it was, and now you do not like what you voted for, and now you want to come here, don't turn this place into the place that you escaped from.
CFO, you mentioned obviously Manatee County, Hillsborough is obviously County. Who else is next on your list? Are there any other more Republican majority counties and cities you plan to apply the same index formula to? Who's next for that?
So we are planning on doing these reviews, and it's going to take a while. Now, we're not going to be able to do events like this, press conferences, but our goal is to do every single government, every single taxing authority in the state of Florida and show people how their local governments are spending. So to answer your question, yes, we are doing other ones. We are doing Republican Stronghold also. I've said that this is not a partisan exercise. This is a spending exercise. You're just going to have to sit tight until we announce the next.
Mr. CFO, I believe you've done audits of most of those counties and cities, if not all of them.
You talking about DOJ audits?
Yes, sir. At what point do you expect to release those reports for people?
I'm going to refer that question to Alex in the governor's office, because they're the ones that are compiling all the information. But what I can tell you is this, is that these are two separate efforts, but they run parallel to each other. And I think we've had this conversation before, just so everyone knows. The FAFO audits are looking at overall spending and how much government has grown over the past 5 years. The DOJ audits are looking for specific instances of spending. Some of them have already been released. Some of them are still under review. But for when and how and through what medium that would be released, I would have to ask you to make that request through Alex in the governor's office.
And I know you said that the city of Orlando has done a relatively good job, at least in the context of.
Still overspending.
Sure, in the context of some of the other things you mentioned. As you looked at their budget and their spending, was there anything specific that jumped out to you that led to that?
Well, the conclusion of 22 million is the calculation itself, right? But there are instances buried in those 22 millions that have that $22 million that has been uncovered by DOJ. But let me just be clear. If the city of Orlando would have hit the number on the dot, where their spending equaled the increase of inflation and population, inside their budget, there would still be wasteful spending, things that I do not think the taxpayers would agree on. So that's why I've said before, and I said it today, that just because you hit that number and that's a ceiling, doesn't necessarily mean that you're not going to find wasteful spending within those numbers, because you will. But those numbers will be released with the DOJ audit.
So just to be clear, you said that the DOJ audit did identify some specific things from Orlando. Do you recall what any of those were?
Just off of the top of my head, the poet laureate thing, that's what I know that was one of them, but I'm sure. I mean, the governor came out with a graphic that had some of it, but not all of it. But also, to be clear, the DOJ audit is not necessarily looking just at the general fund budget, that portion of the budget that deals with your property taxes. They are looking at the whole budget, right? So some of the things that we have found is that local governments are spending more per mile of sidewalk than, say, what DOT is. Now, that's not general fund because you're not taxed on that. That is another calculation. But those are some of the things that they were saying. So what the DOJ audits are looking for is wasteful spending within the context of the whole budget, not necessarily the general fund budget. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does.
Okay.
I do have another question. So you brought up that you can't do these conferences every time. Obviously, the media will thank you for it because we get to ask these questions. But are these privately funded, or are they funded by the state of Florida?
No, these are done by my office. These are. It's no additional cost right now. This is part of our charge and what we get funded for by the state within the confines of our budget right now. Having said that, we are looking at reorganizing our offices to hire more auditors, to hire more local government experts, to hire more CPAs, so we can get in the weeds of some of these numbers and show some of those DOJ-like calculations in the future. Because I have constitutional authority to do so. Our office has always had the ability to do so. It's my understanding it's never been used before, so all of that is under our purview. We have the people to do it right now, but we're looking to expand it because the taxpayers deserve transparency and fiscal responsibility. Yes?
We have Veterans Day coming up. Do you feel like veterans are getting enough in terms of assistance?
No, veterans are not getting enough in terms of assistance. This is one of the things that frustrates me about government. If they reallocated, they streamlined, they became more productive with the dollars that they actually had, they couldn't make excuses that they could not give for our precious veterans. There is more than enough money to take care of our veterans, and no veteran in this state or in this country should go without food, health care, work, housing, or more importantly, our deep profound respect. So guys, I want to thank you. I want to thank you for everything. My door is always open. If you have any follow-up questions, Sydney is in the back, my communications person. I want to thank you guys for doing this, and for the people listening to me right now. Watch your local governments. Hold your local governments accountable. We have 2 chances to take care of this for fiscally sane, responsible spending. It's at the ballot box with candidates in 2026, and at the ballot box with the constitutional amendment next November 2026. God bless you guys. Thank you for coming.